Hi guys, just going to take you through this modular sweep exercise. First of all, we want to make sure that we go to customize unit setup, make sure we're working in meters, make sure that they're also in there, and we're going to need to change the grid settings so we can have some more control. So we're going to change the grid spacing to 1 meter, and we're just going to ramp up the view of how many we have. I'm just going to close that up then. As you can see, it gives you a lot more grids to work with. Now we're going to turn on grid point snap, so we just right click the snaps points at the top there and just maximizing my screen. First of all, I'm just going to draw out here a rectangle that is our 5 by 5 meters that we have in the top view for our scene. We're going to make that rectangle 5 meters by 5 meters, and I'm going to put it directly into the center of our scene by using the move tool and right clicking the coordinates at the bottom hand corner. So as you can see, now the box actually goes halfway through some of the grid points because of the fact that we've got 0.5 of each side of the center. So we'll see that there between the distance there. So if you're wanting to have it snapped to 0.5 of a meter, you have to change those grid settings again. So if we're wanting to build a bit of a layout design for what we're building, we're going to have to get it inside of this square. So I'm going to start off by building some of these modules now that we did earlier on in the session. So I'm going to use the grid snap. I'm going to make one of them. So if you click and then let go straight away, it won't click it. So you have to click, then right click to finish that line. And we're just going to rename this something suitable. So this one's called 2 meter wall. I'm going to make another one. So as you can see, again, this one's going to be a 1 meter one, but make sure that you do that click, and then right click. And this one's going to be 1 meter wall. Now we know it's 1 meter and 2 meter for the other one because we set the grid snap at the beginning. Now, with the next bit, we're going to create a corner. So 1 meter by 1 meter corner. Make sure click, then right click. Okay, we're going to rename this 1 meter corner, just so we know what they are at the moment. And as we do in the session, we're going to, just for an example, give you something else to work with. So if we were making maybe a larger door or a larger part of the wall, but for this one, I'm thinking maybe build like a bay window or something like that. But as you can see, the points just sort of snap, so you can start from wherever you want to create this. So with these now, just moving them away from that layout, just so that they're not going to be too close when we do the next step. And we're just going to build myself this little bay window we were talking about. Now, what we're going to remember is by the radius amount, it's going to be half the actual distance that we have between each side to each side. So a 2 meter radius would be a 4 meter difference between each side. So we're going to drop that down to a 1 meter, meaning each side there that we have would be a 2 meter length, as you can see from the grid points. And what I'm going to do is just rename that one, just so I know what it is in the tool panel. It's a good process to do every time you're building something. Now with all of these, I'm going to select them all and I'm going to convert them to an editable spline. And the reason for that is then I can edit everything as we go along. Now with that, I'm going to attach them all together. But first of all, I'm going to get rid of half of this. And I'm also going to preempt the fact that we're likely to need a little bit of an end on this bay wall. So I'm going to have to probably fuse some of these together. But this one's called the modular paths now. I'm going to name all of them when they're attached modular paths. So on the end of these, we're going to need an extra line so that the bay window doesn't just end and it becomes a part of the wall. So I'm just going to make a line that's 1 meter by 1 meter, and I'm going to shift and move To make a copy, I'm going to use the snaps toggle in vertex, and I'm going to snap one of those each to the end that we have on each side so that it rejoins back up with the wall. Then I'm going to attach by selecting the original, attach the other two, and I'm going to weld the vertices at each part by drag selecting over them and pressing weld. Okay, so as you can see, they've got these little green dots on them. That's because they're all Bezier corners. I can change them all by right-clicking when they're selected and selecting corner instead. Now, this is what you're going to want to change them all to if you want flat corners. Now, if you are working on something else that is more circular, like we have the bay window, if we make that change to it, we will see that it's no longer circular. It kind of snaps it off. So we don't want that on this bay window circle part here that we have. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to build ourselves a little bit of a reference shape. We have the layout here, and we're just going to name that so we know exactly what it is, because the more and more things we make, the more difficult it's going to be to sort of know which line is what and which name is what. So we have rectangle 01, rectangle 02 is not as descriptive. So I'm just going into the front view now, and I'm going to build myself a reference shape that the wall is going to be. So I'm going to do a rectangle, the turn grid snaps back on rather than vertex, and I'm going to draw that out. So it's a 1 meter up to 3 meters for the wall. Now that's a bit thick, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the width to about 0.25 of a meter. Now this is going to be our reference shape for the rest of everything else. So we're going to rename that as well. Okay, now with that we're going to convert it to editable spline so we can edit it as we go along. We're going to select back on the original module paths, and we're going to apply ourselves a sweep modifier to them. Now, this then should give them some thickness. We need to change it, the setting, and pick the original reference. Now we should see these modules starting to be created. Now, if you do get some issues with this, you might want to go to alignment in the sweep parameters and edit those so that potentially it's the bottom right-hand corner of the sweep from the 9 settings available, or mess around with the mirroring. Now, sometimes you'll get them acting a bit different. You can see the changes on the walls go on the inside, but actually the bay window does it on the outside. So what I'm going to do is just put a separate sweep modifier on the bay window as opposed to everything else, and I'm going to do this by separating the two of the objects. So if we want to put in some detail, because we've seen earlier on, this might happen on the outside of the bay window. We're going to build it first anyway, and then we'll make the changes a little bit later on. So as you can see, the skirting board is on the inside of all of these walls, apart from the one on the bay window, which is outside. So as I was alluding to, we're going to have to change that. So we go into the object, turn off the sweep for now, and we're going to detach in editable spline the bay window from everything else. And then it allows us to apply our own sweep modifier to that specific area and to make sure we rename it. Okay, now with that, all we're going to do instead is actually pick the object again like we did, but we're going to this time mirror it instead in the sweep settings. So there we go, into parameters and flip it the opposite way around. So now we'll see everything will be in the right location. So sometimes you might have things like that. You apply as many sweep modifiers as you like, just bear in mind that now we can work on them together and still use the reference shape. So now I can continue to do some of the editing to that. Now, one thing worth considering is the interpolation. As we can see, it's putting a lot of edges in there. And if we want to see the end result, we click that there. If we lower the interpolation on these, when we have corners, that will change on there. But if we do it on the reference shape, like we've selected here, you can see that it will lower the amount that's going throughout. So interpolation is like how rounded some of these edges are going to be. Usually you'll get away with a setting around 0 to 2 for in-games, and make sure that optimize is selected underneath. So I'm just going to go in and make some edits now. So if I wanted to round something off, I can do that with a fillet. As you'll see, because our amount is quite difficult to work with, we might need to just make some changes manually. But what I want to show you is with the interpolation, we can, if we ramp it up, see a difference in that rounding off. Instead of it being flat, we also add another point. If we see that there, it makes the change. So at this stage, all I'm going to do is just to align things so that they're fully square, and I'm just looking at the axis points here, and I can copy and paste the numbers or type them in so that they're the same. It's just finding out which axis point's controlling what with this. So I'm going to move that one to there. So Control C on the other one, and then Control V on that to copy it in that coordinate. And now we can see it's a flat surface on top of the skirting board. Now, if that's a little bit too far along, we can move them and get the visual that we want and keep taking a look. I'm just toggling through front and perspective views just to check what I'm getting. Now, if I want to add some more detail into, like you'll see there, if we lower the interpolation on the bay window, the interpolation on the actual path will affect what it does along the path. The reference will affect what it does for the shape. So now just doing some more changes to the object, just until I get something that I want. I can add points into this by just refining it. Build one at the top as well. When we get to this point, it's probably worth mentioning that we want to refine some points in here as well so that we can put additional parts of the wall in. So maybe you want to build a window, or you want to build a bit of another rail or something like that along the wall, and you're going to need to do that by refining the shape further for the spline. So I'm just going to refine that further, speed up the process, just so you can see what the end result is going to be. Okay, so at this point, we're going to select them all. I'm going to make a copy. The reason for this is then if we do anything to the models from this stage and we don't want them, to make those changes, we have copies of it with the sweep still on. We're just editing now each individual part to make our own modules. So what I'm likely to do as part of this is to detach them so that we can work on them individually. But what's important is because we made them a copy of them, we can now go back to what we had if we make any mistakes or anything like that. So I'm just renaming these specifically now as individualized objects. So I'm going to go through all of that and just speed up the video. So as you can see, the changes are made to the reference, but it's good to distinguish between the references by changing the color as well. So now we can turn them off so they can't be seen. Now the next bit we're going to do is make sure that we can snap these together later on. So we're going to go and turn vertex snap on and affect pivot only. And we're going to move the pivots to the bottom left hand corner of each of the shapes, like so. I'm going to speed up the video just to show you this. Okay, so once we've done that, I'm just going to go into the tools and reset the X form for all of them. That makes sure that all of the axes are facing the same way for each object, as you can see there. Now I've converted them all to edit polys because I'm going to go in and make changes to the objects now. So you could be that you're going to make windows, it could be that you're going to put a door into one of them. So you can make copies of all of these and edit what you're going to do with each. So this one I might turn into a wall, 2 meter wall with a window, and then I might do another one either with a door in it, or maybe think about doing it in the smaller part as well. So depending on what you want, make your copies. In fact, it's probably better with the smaller part. So I'm just going to do that one, and turn one of those into a door. So I'm just going to speed this up now just to show you what we can have as a finished product, just renaming them, and we'll come back towards the end of it. Okay, so when you reach the stage that everything's okay, we're going to start to optimize and remove the faces that we don't want. So for this, because we're doing an interior environment, we're not going to see any exterior ones. So we're going to get rid of the sides, the tops, and the bottoms. I'm just going to speed that up for us. So during this stage, if you want to add any extra details that you forget about, it's a perfect opportunity to. All the way up until we start unwrapping, we can start doing changes to this. So I'm just putting some indents into the window here. And if you, whatever you're wanting to put for your own detailing, you can, just to edit them a little bit. Obviously, these changes won't happen to the modular paths that we did earlier on, so just bear that in mind. Now, when you're happy with everything and you've got your modules set, you're going to want to add an edit poly modifier. And what we're going to do is to unwrap each part, as we talked about in the session, through tiles. So we're going to concentrate on the bits that are going to be on the wall first. In fact, I forgot the sides. Let's just go back and do that, and delete the sides there, these two. And apply the unwrap again. Just making sure that everybody else is like that. Not done on any others. So put the unwrap back on. And we're starting off with parts of the top of the wall. So we're selecting all the parts of each of the top of the wall and unwrapping them with a box mapping technique. And we're going to do that for every single part that's above that rail that we created, just placing them in the bottom left-hand corner. And we're going to do then, after the top part of the wall, we'll do the bottom part of the wall, then we'll do the skirting board at the bottom, and then we'll do the skirting board at the top. Then we'll do the window frames and anything like that, and we'll work our way through and separate them, ready for making our own trim sheet and specific textures for this that we'll be able to repeat. Okay, so I'm going to speed this up, and this is pretty much all I want to get us to do for this this week, is make sure that we have fully unwrapped this, not necessarily packed it. We're going to look at doing that for our UVs, specifically with creating our own textures in next week's session.